A nurse walking home after a long shift never imagined that helping a stranger on the sidewalk would change her life forever. She didn't know he was a billionaire, and she definitely didn't know he'd be the man to heal her broken heart. The evening air in Washington, D.C. carried that faint chill that warned of autumn's full arrival. Streetlights blinked on one by one, painting the sidewalks in warm amber hues as commuters hurried toward the metro. The city buzzed with life, but for Melanie Shaw it was just another long day finally coming to an end. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder, stepping out from the staff entrance of Georgetown Medical Center. The hospital's faint antiseptic smell clung to her scrubs, and her sneakers ached from hours of movement. Still, there was peace in the quiet walk home. The rhythm of the city felt like a heartbeat she'd learned to move with. Melanie wasn't one to complain. Her life was simple, steady, and filled with purpose. She lived with her mother and younger sister in a modest brick apartment near DuPont Circle. Her mother always said she'd been born with a healer's hands, and she carried that truth proudly. But beneath her calm professional smile, Melanie kept something locked away. The memory of a love that once shattered her trust. It had taken her years to rebuild herself, to learn that caring for others didn't mean letting herself be broken again. These days, she poured all that tenderness into her patients instead. She walked faster as a light drizzle began to fall. The street shimmered with reflections of neon signs and car headlights. She was about to cross the street near DuPont Circle Park when she noticed a small crowd gathered by a bench beneath a flickering lamppost. People were murmuring, phones raised, unsure of what to do. Her pulse quickened. Someone collapsed, a woman called. Melanie dropped her bag instantly and pushed through the circle. A man lay sprawled on the pavement, expensive suit, fine leather shoes, wristwatch gleaming under the streetlight. His skin was pale, lips slightly blue. "Sir? Can you hear me?" she said, kneeling beside him. No response. She felt for a pulse, faint, erratic. "Call 911, she told the nearest bystander, her voice steady and firm. Then she tilted the man's head back, checked his airway, and began CPR. Her palms pressed against his chest, counting rhythmically. 1, 2, 3, 4. The drizzle turned heavier, but she didn't stop. Her hair stuck to her forehead, her scrub soaked through, yet she moved with practiced precision. When the man gasped faintly, she almost cried out in relief. Sirens wailed in the distance. "Hang on," she whispered, leaning close. "You're going to be okay." The ambulance arrived moments later, red lights reflecting on wet asphalt. Paramedics rushed out, and Melanie gave them a quick summary of his vitals. One of them looked at her curiously. "You're from Georgetown Med, right?" She nodded, stepping back as they lifted the man onto a stretcher. "I'll ride with you. I'm a nurse." Rain pattered against the ambulance windows as they sped through traffic. Melanie watched the monitor, silently praying. For reasons she couldn't explain, something about this stranger stirred an ache inside her. A sense that this night would change more than just his life. At the ER, the staff moved with urgency. Melanie helped stabilize him until a doctor took over. When she finally stepped aside, she caught her first real glimpse of him under the bright hospital lights. He was handsome in a quiet, refined way, sharp jawline, streaks of gray in his dark hair, the kind of man whose presence commanded a room even while unconscious. When the attending physician approached her, his tone held surprise. "Do you know who that is?" Melanie shook her head, wiping rain from her cheeks. "That's Leonard West, founder of West Tech, the billionaire tech guy." Her brows lifted. She'd heard the name before, on news headlines, charity galas, magazine covers, but she only saw a man who had stopped breathing on a sidewalk, not a symbol of wealth or power. "Well," she said softly, "tonight he was just someone who needed help." Hours later, the hospital had quieted. Melanie sat in the corner of the recovery room, charting notes for the attending team. Leonard West lay still but stable, connected to monitors that beeped steadily. When he stirred, his eyes fluttered open, gray-blue, clouded with confusion. Where am I? He rasped. Georgetown Medical, she said gently, stepping closer. You collapsed. But you're safe now. He blinked slowly, studying her face as if trying to remember something. You were there? She smiled faintly. Yes. You gave us quite a scare, Mr. West. He exhaled shakily, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. Then, I suppose I owe you my life. Just doing my job, she said, though her voice softened at his tone. He looked like a man used to control, yet now he seemed oddly vulnerable, a quiet strength beneath exhaustion. Before she left, she scribbled a short note and placed it on his bedside table. Wishing you a speedy recovery, Nurse Melanie Shaw. Then she walked away, unaware that her name would echo in his thoughts long after she was gone. Back at home, Melanie's mother and sister were still awake, sitting in the living room. There she is, our night shift hero, her mom teased, waving the TV remote. We heard about that man who collapsed near DuPont Circle. You were there, weren't you? Melanie chuckled, kicking off her wet shoes. You know me too well, Mama. Her younger sister looked up from her phone. Did you really save a billionaire? Melanie rolled her eyes. I didn't even know who he was. Everyone's life matters the same. Her mom smiled approvingly. That's exactly why you're so good at what you do. Melanie smiled but stayed quiet. When she finally lay in bed that night, the city's hum fading beyond her window, her mind wandered back to the man's face, pale under the streetlight, his hand clutching hers just before he was lifted into the ambulance. Why couldn't she stop thinking about him? The next morning, Leonard West woke in a private room surrounded by machines and silence. His assistant Jason hovered nearby, phone in hand. Sir, you collapsed near DuPont Circle. The doctors say it was exhaustion and dehydration. Nothing life-threatening. Leonard frowned faintly. How did I even get to the hospital? Jason hesitated. Apparently, a nurse found you. Performed CPR before the ambulance arrived. He handed over the note. Leonard unfolded the paper. The handwriting was neat, graceful. Wishing you a speedy recovery, Nurse Melanie Shaw. His thumb brushed the ink lightly. Melanie Shaw. He mouthed the name like it was a secret worth keeping. She didn't leave any contact information? Jason shook his head. No, sir. Just that note. Leonard leaned back against the pillows, eyes tracing the sterile ceiling. He'd spent years surrounded by people, employees, advisors, acquaintances, yet rarely anyone who made him feel seen. But the memory of her calm voice, the steadiness in her eyes as he faded in and out of consciousness, it stayed. For the first time in a long while, Leonard West, a man who could buy anything, felt something he couldn't explain. Gratitude, curiosity, and an odd warmth that refused to fade. A few days later, Melanie walked through the hospital corridors, clipboard in hand, checking patient charts. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows, painting golden patches on the floor. Dr. Cruz, her colleague and closest friend, leaned against the nurse's station. Hey, superhero, how's your billionaire patient? Melanie laughed. You're never gonna let that go, are you? Not when the whole hospital's buzzing about it. He apparently sent flowers to the ER. Melanie raised an eyebrow. Really? Dr. Cruz grinned. Maybe you made quite an impression. Melanie brushed it off, though her cheeks warmed slightly. I just did what any nurse would do. Still, later that afternoon, as she walked past the hospital lobby, she froze. Standing by the reception desk, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, was Leonard West himself, looking healthier, sharper, and entirely out of place among the hospital's everyday bustle. He held a bouquet of white lilies. Their eyes met, and the noise around her faded. He smiled, a genuine, grateful smile. Miss Shaw. Mr. West, she managed, trying not to sound flustered. I wanted to thank you in person, he said, stepping closer, for saving my life. I owe you more than flowers, but it's a start. She took the bouquet, smiling softly. You don't owe me anything, Mr. West. I'm just glad you're okay. He hesitated, studying her face. Would you allow me to buy you a coffee sometime? Just to say thank you properly. Melanie's instinct was to decline. She'd learned long ago not to blur lines between her work and personal life. But something in his tone, humble and earnest, made her pause. Just coffee? She asked, one brow raised. He smiled. Just coffee. And for the first time in a long while, she felt her heart shift, not in fear, but in possibility. As he left, Melanie stood holding the lilies, watching the door close behind him. She told herself it was just gratitude, nothing more. But deep down, she knew that this night, the night everything changed, had started something far more powerful than either of them yet understood. A week passed, but the moment kept replaying in Leonard West's mind. The rain, the sirens, and the voice that had called him back from the edge. He'd faced boardrooms, billion-dollar deals, and hostile press conferences without blinking. But remembering the way Melanie Shaw looked at him that night, calm, steady, full of compassion, disarmed him completely. He had everything a man could want: wealth, power, recognition. Yet, lately, his life had felt hollow. A series of meetings, numbers, and headlines, all leading to the same quiet loneliness when the doors closed. Until that nurse appeared. He wasn't sure if it was gratitude or something deeper, but he knew one thing. He needed to see her again. The lobby of Georgetown Medical Center was bustling with the usual Monday morning rush. Melanie walked quickly, flipping through patient charts on her tablet, her mind focused on her rounds. She was good at her job, disciplined, professional, respected by her peers. But that didn't stop the small flutter in her chest every time she passed the spot in the ER where she'd first seen him. She told herself it was nothing, just habit, curiosity. But deep down she felt the echo of something unfinished. When she stepped into the nurse's station, Dr. Elena Cruz, her closest friend, leaned across the counter with a teasing grin. Your favorite patient's here, Elena whispered. Melanie frowned. Who? Elena nodded toward the lobby. The billionaire you revived. He's impossible to miss. Melanie turned, and sure enough, there he was, tall, composed, dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than her car. But it wasn't his wealth that caught her attention. It was his expression. He wasn't there as a powerful man. He was there as someone genuinely grateful. She hesitated before walking over, her heartbeat picking up. Mr. West, she greeted politely, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. You shouldn't be here. You're supposed to be resting. Leonard smiled. I feel better than ever, thanks to you. I was just doing my job, she said, smiling slightly. He held up a small bag. Then maybe you'll let me buy you coffee. A real one, not the hospital machine kind. Melanie's instinct was to refuse. She'd promised herself to keep her walls intact, especially after the heartbreak years ago that had left her wary of anything that felt too good. But the sincerity in his eyes softened her resolve. Just coffee? She asked. Just coffee, he assured. They met later that afternoon at a quiet cafe tucked between bookstores near Wisconsin Avenue. The space smelled of roasted beans and fresh pastries. Leonard arrived first, looking surprisingly relaxed without his usual air of command. When Melanie walked in, wearing her casual sweater and jeans, he stood immediately. You came, he said, smiling warmly. I said I would, she replied, taking a seat. Though I still don't think you needed to thank me like this. He leaned forward, eyes kind. When someone saves your life, coffee seems like the least you can offer. They both laughed, the kind of easy laughter that melted any lingering awkwardness. Their conversation flowed effortlessly. They talked about DC's unpredictable weather, their favorite places to eat, and somehow ended up discussing art. Leonard revealed his quiet passion for painting, something he hadn't told anyone in years. Painting? She said, surprised. I didn't picture you as the creative type. He chuckled. I guess I hide it well. My wife used to say it made me human. Melanie's gaze softened. You were married? I was, he said quietly. She passed away 5 years ago. I'm sorry, Melanie said gently. He nodded. Thank you. I stopped painting after that. Everything just lost its color. There was a brief silence filled not with discomfort but understanding. She didn't pry further, and he was grateful for that. When he asked about her, she hesitated at first, then spoke honestly. I've been through my share of hurt too. I was engaged once, years ago. Thought it was forever. His expression turned sympathetic. What happened? He found forever with someone else, she said with a faint, sad smile. It broke something in me. Since then, I've been careful, maybe too careful. Leonard looked at her, admiration in his gaze. You still help people every day. You still show up for others. That's not careful, Melanie. That's brave. For a moment, her heart stirred in a way she hadn't felt in years. Their coffee meetings became weekly, then almost daily. What began as gratitude turned into friendship, one that neither of them saw coming. They strolled along the Potomac River after work, talking about everything from their favorite childhood memories to their dreams. Leonard confessed how lonely his mansion felt at night. She confessed how she sometimes feared letting anyone too close. One evening, as the city lights reflected on the water, Leonard said softly, You know, I used to believe love was something that just happened once. And when it's gone, that's it. But meeting you, it makes me wonder if maybe it can come quietly, like this. Melanie looked away, her heart trembling. Leonard, I don't know if I'm ready for... He interrupted gently. Then we don't rush it. I'm not asking for forever right now. I just want to know you, the woman who brought me back to life. She met his gaze, and in that instant, something fragile inside her shifted, fear giving way to trust. Weeks later, Leonard invited her to an art exhibition at the National Gallery of Art. The theme was light through shadows. The gallery glowed under soft golden light, the murmur of guests blending with classical music. Melanie walked beside Leonard, her arm lightly brushing his. He looked different tonight. Not the billionaire everyone admired, but a man simply content to be beside her. They stopped before a painting of a sunrise over water, vibrant with reds and golds. It reminds me of you, Leonard said quietly. She blinked. Me? He nodded. You walk into people's lives and somehow bring light, even when you don't mean to. Her cheeks warmed, her breath catching in her throat. For years she'd hidden behind calm professionalism and caution, but standing there beside him, she felt seen, truly seen. When the evening ended, they stepped outside into the cool air. The city hummed softly around them. Melanie turned to him. You've done a lot for me lately. The dinners, the walks, the flowers. I don't want you to think you owe me anything. He smiled gently. I don't. But you've given me something I didn't know I needed. What's that? Hope, he said simply. Her eyes glistened. For a long moment, they just stood there. Two people who had been broken in different ways, realizing that maybe healing was possible after all. It was nearly midnight when Leonard drove her home. The streets were quiet, the glow of passing cars washing over their faces. As he pulled up to her building, she turned to him. Leonard, I need to be honest, I'm scared. Of me? Of feeling too much again, she said softly. I told myself I'd never fall for anyone after what happened before. It's safer that way. He reached across, gently taking her hand. Then let me be the one who shows you that love can be safe again. Tears welled in her eyes, unbidden, but welcome. Leonard. He smiled, lifting her hand to his lips. You don't have to say anything. I'll wait as long as it takes. For a heartbeat, time stood still. The noise of the world faded, leaving only the quiet hum of connection. The kind that begins not with grand gestures, but with trust reborn. She squeezed his hand lightly, her heart whispering what her lips couldn't yet say. "Good night, Leonard," she murmured, stepping out of the car. "Good night, Melanie." He watched as she walked up the steps to her building, her silhouette framed in the porch light. When she turned once more to smile before going inside, he knew his world had color again. The sun dipped low over Washington, painting the skyline in molten gold as Melanie stood by her apartment window, her heart pounding in disbelief. On the small velvet box in her hand glimmered a diamond so brilliant it seemed to hold starlight. "Melanie Shaw," Leonard had said earlier that evening, his voice trembling with sincerity. "You found me when I was broken, and you healed more than my body. You healed my heart. Will you let me love you for the rest of my life?" Tears had filled her eyes, her past fears melting under the warmth of his gaze. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, Leonard. I will." Now, standing in the quiet of her room, she could still feel his arms around her, the way he held her, as if he'd never let go. The woman who once swore never to fall in love again was about to become a bride. 2 months later, Washington buzzed with excitement. The wedding of Leonard West, tech visionary and one of the city's most respected philanthropists, was the talk of the season. But behind all the headlines and whispers was something deeper and more genuine. A love story born from compassion, not wealth. Melanie's mother, Grace Shaw, sat in the front pew of the cathedral, tears shining in her eyes. Her younger sister, Lily, couldn't stop smiling as she adjusted the lace on Melanie's gown. "You look like a dream," Lily said softly. "Leonard's going to lose his mind when he sees you." Melanie laughed nervously. "I still can't believe this is happening. It feels like yesterday I was just walking home from the hospital." "That walk changed everything," Lily said. "You changed his life, and he changed yours." The doors opened, and the orchestra began to play. As Melanie took her first step down the aisle, every fear she'd once held, every doubt that love wasn't meant for her, vanished. Leonard stood at the altar, dressed in a classic black tuxedo, his eyes locked on hers. He wasn't looking at the gown, the diamonds, or the grandeur. He was looking at the woman who saw him when he was invisible. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You're my miracle, Mel, and you're mine," she replied softly. The ceremony was simple yet elegant. White roses, warm candlelight, and vows that made even the most stoic guests tear up. "I promise," Leonard said, "to protect your heart the way you protected mine, with gentleness, honesty, and endless love." "And I promise," Melanie said, "to walk beside you. Not behind, not ahead, but always with you." When the priest declared them husband and wife, applause filled the cathedral. Cameras flashed. But for Melanie, all that existed was Leonard's smile and the soft press of his lips against hers. They were no longer nurse and patient, or billionaire and ordinary woman. They were simply two souls who had found each other in the chaos of life. Their honeymoon began in Paris, a city that seemed to sing in color and light. Leonard had rented a private suite overlooking the Eiffel Tower. Every evening, as the lights flickered across the skyline, they would sit by the window, sipping wine and sharing stories. Melanie leaned against his shoulder one night, the city's glow reflecting in her eyes. "You know, I used to think happy endings were for other people," she said softly. "But now, it feels real." Leonard turned to her, brushing a curl from her face. "You deserve happiness, Mel. You always did. You just needed someone to remind you." They walked hand in hand through Montmartre, shared crepes by the Seine, and laughed like two people discovering life all over again. Tourists recognized Leonard sometimes, but he never cared. When he looked at Melanie, the world blurred into insignificance. One morning, they visited the Pont des Arts Bridge, the famous Lovelock Bridge. Melanie brought a small golden padlock she'd bought from a street vendor. "What should we write?" she asked. Leonard thought for a moment, then smiled. To the woman who found me. She smiled back, writing the words carefully before they locked it onto the rail and tossed the key into the Seine. Forever sealed, he said. Forever, she whispered, her heart full. From the romance of Paris to the luxury of Dubai, their love seemed to bloom in every place they went. The Burj Al Arab gleamed against the sky like a sail of silver, and from their suite overlooking the Arabian Gulf, they watched the waves shimmer beneath the desert moon. Melanie wore a flowing white sundress as they walked along the private beach, her feet sinking into the warm sand. Leonard trailed beside her, barefoot, his jacket slung casually over his shoulder. I think I could live here forever, she said, gazing at the horizon. Then maybe we'll build a home by the water one day, he said, wrapping an arm around her waist. Somewhere peaceful, somewhere ours. She looked up at him, smiling. I like the sound of that. They spent the days exploring souks, riding through the desert and golden dunes and dining under the stars. At night, they would sit on the balcony, their fingers intertwined, the sound of the waves echoing like a lullaby. On their final night in Dubai, Leonard surprised her with a private dinner on a yacht. The deck was covered in fairy lights, the table adorned with white roses, her favorite. As they ate, soft music drifted from a live violinist nearby. The air was warm, filled with jasmine and sea breeze. Mel, Leonard said suddenly, his tone tender, you've changed the way I see everything. Success, money, all of it. None of it ever filled me. But you make me feel alive. Melanie blinked back tears, reaching for his hand. You gave me back faith in love, Leonard. You showed me that it's not about perfection. It's about trust. He smiled, bringing her hand to his lips. Then promise me one thing. What's that? No matter what happens, no matter how busy life gets, we'll always come back to this. To us. To the way we feel right now. I promise, she whispered. As the yacht drifted over the calm waters, Leonard pulled her into his arms, and they danced slowly under the moonlight. No music, no audience, just the sound of their hearts finding rhythm together. When they returned to Washington weeks later, life didn't feel ordinary anymore. It felt purposeful. Leonard continued running his company, but now his focus extended beyond business. With Melanie by his side, he founded a medical charity for nurses, helping provide scholarships and healthcare support across the state. Melanie continued working at the hospital, not because she had to, but because she loved it. Her patients often smiled when they recognized her from the news or from the charity programs. You're Mrs. West, aren't you? One elderly patient said one afternoon. The nurse who married the billionaire? Melanie chuckled. Yes, that's me. But today, I'm just your nurse. That humility, that gentle grace, was what Leonard loved most about her. Every evening when he came home, he would find her laughing with Lily and their mother, cooking dinner like any other day. Their house was filled with warmth, not wealth, laughter, not luxury. Sometimes when he couldn't sleep, Leonard would lie awake watching her, still amazed by how fate had led her to him that night. A simple nurse walking home, who changed everything. Months later, Melanie walked through the park where it had all begun. The very spot where she had found Leonard collapsed that evening. Now, a small bronze plaque gleamed on the side of the bench, engraved with simple words. For the moment that changed everything. LM. She sat down, smiling softly, and felt a pair of arms slide around her from behind. Leonard kissed her cheek. I thought I'd find you here. I was just remembering, she said, leaning into him. If I hadn't stopped that day. He chuckled. I would have missed the love of my life. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sunset wash the sky in amber and rose. Do you ever think about how strange it was, she murmured. How one small decision, to help a stranger, led to all this? Leonard nodded, resting his chin on her shoulder. Maybe it wasn't strange at all, maybe it was destiny. Melanie smiled, her fingers finding his. Then destiny has excellent timing. The city hummed softly around them, but in that small corner of Washington, time seemed to stand still. Just a nurse and a billionaire, two hearts intertwined forever by the simplest act of kindness. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel. Your love, comments, and shares mean everything to me. Grateful for each of you. Let's keep growing together.